have things that look closer to a true threat, which, are still kind of hard to define. But in one case, a person compared ICE officers to Nazis on X back in January, writing that all ICE agents need to be put down like the dogs that they are. ICE agents actually showed up at her door about 4 months later, and they got her information from the social media company, of where she lived and what her details were. And these agents, they asked her not to post anymore.
Now, a new investigation by the Wall Street Journal reveals that ICE, the controversial U.S. immigration law enforcement agency, is carrying out extensive digital surveillance. The Wall Street Journal report outlines how the organization's monitoring social channels like Reddit and Facebook, searching for anti-ICE sentiment. Shane Shifflett is the investigative reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Hello to you, Shane.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us, then. So, fascinating story in your paper. Please tell us what you found.
Well, we found that ICE is essentially expanding a round-the-clock digital dragnet. It's looking at, almost 20 different public websites, looking for what they call threats that could endanger the agency's mission. But we talked to, dozens of sources, and we reviewed contract documents and spoke with defense attorneys, and a lot of the speech that they're going after, in the cases that we can see, it seems like it's more critical of immigration policies and agents than rather than true threats.
Can you give us some examples of comments like that online that has drawn ICE's attention? That may, and the active debate about this, as you report, has to do with the line between real threats and just free speech. Can you give me some examples that illustrate the argument?
Yeah, I mean, there's a wide range of kind of speech that we were able to sort of review in our investigation. I mean, you have things that look closer to a true threat, which, are still kind of hard to define. But in one case, a person compared ICE officers to Nazis on X back in January, writing that all ICE agents need to be put down like the dogs that they are. ICE agents actually showed up at her door about 4 months later, and they got her information from the social media company, of where she lived and what her details were. And these agents, they asked her not to post anymore. We've reviewed other ones where, one of the things that the agency is really concerned about is what they consider doxing, which is sort of revealing personal details about its about its agents, or even details about its mission, and in one of those, in many of those cases, we found that users were typically sharing information that was already public. We looked closely at one Reddit user who posted more than 100 times between a period of January and February this year. And out of those, more than 100 posts, a lot of them were about carpentry or music. There were 3 that we could identify that talked about ICE agents or sort of seemingly referenced immigration policy or the agency. And one of those posts, that user did reference the agent who shot Renee Good in Minneapolis back earlier this year. And he did mention that he hopes that agent ends up in penitentiary, and listed some of the places very generally where that agent had lived. So we're talking about like the town, not a specific address, or the state.
So what sort of action, Shane, has been taken against some of those who've drawn ICE's attention?
I think a lot of what's happened so far is, we've seen an increase in the number of administrative subpoenas that are sent to tech companies, social media companies like Google and Reddit. Those started increasing in September, and that's kind of the step one of, investigators trying to figure out who's behind the user who's making these posts, and can they identify that individual so that they can further investigate. There have been some other subpoenas that have involved grand juries, which are they're a little bit more significant. But so far, there's been no actual criminal charges in any of these cases. Right. And there's been a few individuals who have actually fought back, and the government ends up essentially dropping its case when they hear from a defense attorney.
And has there been any legal pushback against the ICE agency over this? The First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution provides for freedom of expression, free speech. Is there any action being taken on that front by any individual or any group?
Yeah, well, the ACLU has, they do have a case that they filed, that it's moving slowly, but it does sort of challenge some of these issues that we're discussing today. But by and large, once the government sort of abandoned its case, there's not much that can be done in sort of a legal sense. There's nothing left to challenge. So, most folks have actually responded by going quiet on social media after they're visited, or that they've learned that there is, that the government's been requesting their information from one of these social media companies.
Has there been any comment from the administration on your story?
ICE told us that, their investigative methods abide by the Constitution. They respect civil liberties and privacy interests, and that any allegation that DHS or ICE are attempting to squash free speech is categorically false.
Okay, Shane Shifflett, investigative reporter for the Wall Street Journal. Thank you so much for that update on your reporting.